I'm going to start completely and utterly, completely different to anything you've got. Sorry, because I think it's brilliant. Okay, so today, in a carefully orchestrated political conference, press conference, there sat Sir Keir Starmer, for once not downed by COVID, but in a press conference, he sat with Angela Rayner. The body language was extraordinarily bad, but they got on with it. She introduced him as the Prime Minister in waiting, and they talked very vocally about how, Mike, the Labour Party believes, as we all do, I should say, that standards in public life should improve, and this should happen. Not 5 seconds before he stood up, or as he stood up, Boris Johnson releases a tweet in true political Boris Johnson style and completely takes the carpet from under Keir Starmer. I ask you this, Mike. I know what you're going to say, but it's my job. He never gets it right, Keir Starmer. I'm beginning to feel sorry for him. Do you not agree?
What was the tweet? I missed the tweet.
Boris Johnson said 5 seconds after it, but as Keir Starmer stood up to make this big thing, Boris said, I've written to Sir Lindsay Hoyle, MPs shouldn't have consultancies, second jobs, all that. We need to change all the standards. Thank you very much indeed. Keir Starmer does his bit. First journalist stands up and says, are you aware that Boris Johnson's just done that? And he went, no. I mean, Mike Buckley's smiling. Do you know what I mean? That tells you everything about politics, Mike, doesn't it?
I mean, did Boris Johnson plan that? Quite possibly. I don't know. I mean, in one way, yeah, that steals Keir Starmer's thunder. What we don't know, though, with Boris's pledge to stop paid consultancies, is it actually going to stop the gravy trade? Yeah. Will they just instead they're going to do the same work and call it something else and get around the rules another way? We don't know. We wait to see the evidence, and I certainly will trust Boris Johnson. Well, never, actually. So if this is true, it's a step in the right direction. I suspect if it does happen, I mean, the downside for Boris Johnson is he's going to make lots of his MPs who've made hundreds of thousands of pounds or millions of pounds in some cases doing paid consultancies very unhappy. Does this shorten Boris Johnson's tenure as Prime Minister of this country? Almost certainly. Does that make me happy? Yes, it does.
Fair enough. Belinda, what's your take on this?
Oh, I love it. It's so Shakespearean, treachery and knavery going on. It's quite exciting to watch. But no, I think it's very political. It's game playing. I actually agree. I think Boris is a lot of talk with not much trouser behind it. He makes these wild, passionate pledges, and because he uses fancy words, we get all inspired. And then year on year goes by and nothing ever really happens. I do think that MPs. If they have their hand in the till and things like that, they should be called out. I don't think the country's corrupt because we call them out, and quite rightly so. But I also think Boris might be wanting to distract from a certain news story about his dad today as well. And I think he plays the game very well.
Very interesting. Let's talk to you about betraying people, or rather saying things that don't happen, Mike. The government's cancellation of the HS2 project. This week we heard, it's not going to go to Leeds now. They now think that getting to the Midlands is going north. Does that betray the north? Is that a complete, we've talked incessantly about the Tories' idea of levelling up. This is betraying that thought, isn't it?
Well, I don't know about you. I have spent the last 11 years watching the Conservative government announce train lines in the north, and then they never get built. I mean, George Osborne used to do it just before an election, and it used to work incredibly well because people thought, oh, we'll vote for them, we might get a train line. Of course, they don't get it. So this time they've cancelled HS2, which, to be fair, is actually a real train line, at least from London to Birmingham, which in my mind is a bit nuts. There's already 2 train lines which work perfectly well from London to Birmingham. Why would we need another one? I don't know. Anyway. So they've cancelled HS2 going up to Leeds, but they have at the same time announced another set of fantasy rail lines in the north to make people feel a bit better. If those happen, it's only a partial betrayal. But I'd be very surprised if they did. I suspect it's another sop to make people feel a bit better when the news comes out about cancelling HS2, and we won't see any of them. I mean, I'm sure you know as well as I do, the amount of money spent on transport in the north versus London is minuscule, and it's been that way for a really long time, and it really matters. I mean, I'm sure that you, like me, have got a train line, train up as far as Doncaster or Newcastle or somewhere, and you get off and you think, well, now what on earth do I do to get to where I want to go? And actually, most people, of course, everybody lives in these places. That is their daily experience of waiting hours for a bus and one doesn't turn up. And
that's very true. It's very, very, very true. Can't disagree with that.
And you go elsewhere in Europe, everything works.
Yeah, it's true. Belinda, he's right, isn't he? To be fair, he is right. There's no argument at all.
Not about everything working in Europe, no. But I would agree. I think, well, I don't think the Tory party are going to lose red wall voters over this. I agree that it is a fantasy train line. We're a small island. England is tiny. I don't know why we needed this high speed railway zipping everywhere as if we were some
I'll tell you
kind
what
of
the North wants. The North wants that money to be spent on jobs and infrastructure and housing and hospitals. That's what the North needs. Fact.
It's focused on the big sort of Harvey Nichols cities of the North as opposed to the small towns in between. I do think we should focus more on the infrastructure between the towns and cities of the North as opposed to just getting people up and down from London. I think it's been a disaster. It was introduced by the Tories and now it's been cancelled by the Tories. This isn't, you can't use the excuse that, oh, this was Labour and we're just trying to sort out their mess. This is a Tory mess.
Yep,
and a vast waste, a huge waste of taxpayers' money. It's as if they have blank cheques and they just think the taxpayer in a money tree. I would love to know. We want to see the accounts of exactly where the money was wasted, how much could have been spent elsewhere. We need to hold people to account.
I repeat what Kieran, who works on this show, said last week. We voted for a blue government that's turned green and now spends money like they're red. It's unbelievable.
Yes.
Let's talk about, Belinda, let's talk about the main news story of the day, that incredibly brave cricketer, Azeem Rafiq, who stood before the DCMS. And I'm being absolutely serious. It stopped me in my tracks today, and I watched him bare his soul. And some of what was said about the racist abuse, the institutionalised racial abuse he suffered whilst trying to play cricket for Yorkshire, was appalling. There is, of course, and always is, a rush to blame Muslim fundamentalists. But as I pointed out, there's a billion Muslims in the world. Do you think that we have an appalling racist problem in this country, Mike? Do you think it's the same as the rest of the world? Do you think this is a moment where the UK will wake up a bit more?
I don't think we've got an appalling racist problem. I used to work in the refugee migration sector, and as part of that was part of research into public attitudes towards race and people from other countries and all of that. And I mean, in a way, sad, but also it's a mixed news. I mean, in a way, the research I remember, we found that 13%, as in 1/3, of the country, so under 15%. Of people are actually racist. Like, they actually really don't like people who work like them, and they do want them all to go away or worse. And that's a big number of people in a country with 70 million inhabitants. But it also happily means that 87% of the population are not racist at all. And that is.
But we surely need to educate that 13%, don't we? And don't situations like Azeem Rafiq, does that not do a lot of good in that direction if we're talking about that?
I think it does. And just like we had George Floyd and other things last year with the black community, I think this coming out with Azeem and the Asian community, I think it can only be a good thing. And I hope that there are people in this country who today think, oh, yeah, that was me. You know, I did stuff like that because I thought it was funny. You know, and I would imagine there's a chunk of people out there who just thought it was funny and didn't realise it was actually as harmful, as damaging and horrible as it is. And hopefully some of those people will think, I wish I hadn't done that now and I'm never going to do it again. You know, because this is just real people. They're just trying to live their lives. You know, we should live our lives together. And,
I agree.
You know, there's no need for this stuff.
Belinda, what's your take?
My take on it is there are real, proper racists in this country. And I think they calling them out, brilliant, wonderful. We should do it all the time. I think it's society versus racist, not black versus white or white versus Asian. I think we should all, you know, call them out as much as we can. But I think it is different from a kind of a banter that certainly my generation grew up thinking that it wasn't offensive. Clearly it was.
Yeah.
And it is. And actually I'm very grateful for Rafiq for being able to talk to the country about how it made him feel, because I think most people are ignorant to how it makes someone feel.
I think that's what I mean. But
I don't think it makes them racist, like these nasty, evil racists. I think actually it's people in authority and politicians that fuel racism by ring fencing different groups of people from criticism, treating them differently.
I think we need to educate people more.
I don't think the British people are incessantly racist at all. I think we're very welcoming to a very charitable nation to refugees, asylum seekers. I think it's when the government messes up and authorities treat different groups differently and to double standards that fuels suspicion. But no, that was I watched what he said. I was moved. I felt very teary because I didn't even understand how it must have made someone feel to use the P word, because in the 90s and the 80s it was used to describe a newsagents on a corner shop.
I think you can be racist. I just think that people's language. I think you're absolutely spot on, Belinda. What I would hope for is that all of us are educated from today's events and continue to be educated. It's very easy to look back and, you make a mistake, you apologize for it. But actually isn't the point to say, right, from today, we all need to change, perhaps in slight subtle ways, I don't know, the way we behave and the things that we do. But listen, guys, thank you so much